Hey, women entrepreneurs, ready to turn your big ideas into reality? At CIBC, we believe in empowering women to lead, innovate, and thrive, and we're cheering you on every step of the way. Discover the CIBC Women Entrepreneurs Hub. Connect with inspiring mentors, swap stories with fellow entrepreneurs, and access resources made just for you. Because every business is unique, and you don't have to do it alone. Whether you're just starting out or taking your business to the next level, CIBC is here to support you. Visit cibc.com/womenentrepreneurs and find out how CIBC can help your business soar.
Welcome to the Startup Women podcast. Today's guest is Jessica Stevenson, co-founder and CEO of Everist. After a decade at the world's top beauty companies, Jessica and her co-founder Jamie wanted to have more impact and help create the future of beauty, creating cutting-edge, planet-forward innovation. Everist is Canada's fastest growing consumer brand, one of Time's best inventions, and has sold over 1 million category-creating concentrates, which also means over 1 million plastic bottles avoided from landfills. Now, one Everest product is sold every minute. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I just want to pause on that intro. I was reading through those facts and each one just keeps getting more and more impressive.
Oh, thank you so much.
What a cool feeling. How does it feel to know that you have a product sold every minute?
Yeah, it's quite a feat. Just thinking about where we started to where we are now. You know, it feels like a hot minute ago, but also like forever. So I'm very proud, I guess.
Yeah.
Lots of work to do, though.
I know. It's so important to stop and actually think about that sometimes, right? Because it's so easy to be thinking of the next milestone. And
so easy.
I know you come from big beauty and you've worked for some major companies too. So sometimes do you feel like those numbers almost feel like more of an expectation or something you've dabbled around before?
Yeah, definitely. I think we definitely have big goals and aspirations and just sort of expect big things. So I think it's one of the things with entrepreneurs too. I think you're always like looking at the next thing, and sometimes it's very hard to celebrate like the current because you're always looking forward. So we do try to do that. But yes, our minds are like always thinking about the next goal.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, super impressive and such an impressive impact, especially when we look at it from the sustainability side.
Thank you.
So what we like to do on this show is talk about some of these pivotal moments that happen behind the scenes. We often hear about founder stories or the moments that a product really takes off, but we also want to talk about the moments behind the scene that have felt a little bit more difficult that a lot of founders are facing and aren't hearing conversations around. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how this business began first, and then we'll dive a little bit more into your pivotal moment. But tell us a little bit about your career before, because I hinted at it there, but you did work for big beauty before diving into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I spent over a decade, in big beauty, working for some of the largest companies, whether it's starting in General Mills, but then spending a large part of my career in beauty. So I was the marketing director for Revlon Professional Brands kind of across North America, and then became general manager of New by Nature. So it's an industry I love. There's so much you can do. But I think for us, the big, decision we made was really, how do we do something that has more impact? For us, it was like taking plastics out of the beauty industry, and then also, how do we lower our carbon footprint? How do we do all these things for the planet? But then also it's like, how do we do better for people and planet? And I think we'll talk a bit about it, today, but really thinking about it holistically and how that messaging and those problems have changed over the time has been really interesting journey we've been on.
And some would say I don't want to call it a peak of a career because I'm sure there was more to come, but at such a high point in your career, working for some of these big brands in the roles that you were, that must have been scary to think about going off and doing your own thing.
Yeah, for sure. It was a big jump. And I think, was able to do it. One, I think I've always been, since I was younger, I've had this entrepreneurship drive. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I think I always had this idea of building something with like lasting positive impact, like building something and creating something, but really didn't know what that looked like. And so when we fast forward in the career and went into our corporate career, we learned so much. I think for me, it was like something I just had to do. It was like a burning desire, something, very naively, I feel like, in a way, because you almost like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then after you get into, you realize just how hard it is. But I had a really great support network, family, obviously Jamie, our co-founder, and everything that allowed me to sort of take that leap. And then it's been a wild journey ever since.
Yeah, I believe it. You mentioned that that desire really came from a place of wanting to have impact. Talk to me about where the idea for Everist products actually came from, because was it, we want to have impact and we know this is the way to do it, or did it start with that impact question and then product discovery?
Yeah, great question. For us, it was definitely very organic. We really had more the problem in mind. Like, as I was mentioning before, how do we get single-use plastic out of the industry? How do we do something better? But we really didn't know what that looked like. And so we definitely dabbled in lots of different things. First, it started with powders, and then, mix at home, and we had solids. But for us, we also wanted to have something that was performed like what I expected from professional hair care, et cetera, and have the sensorial cues and all these things. So for us, it really took quite a bit of time of experimentation before we landed on something that was our concentrates as they are today. And then even once we launched the concentrates today in our skincare base, and there was so much iteration in market, because when you do something new, it definitely takes a bunch of experimentation and talking to your customers, making you understand what do they like, what do they not like, and then pivoting. So the very first iteration to where we are now is quite different.
I can imagine. And if someone says, I don't really actually know what concentrates are, can you explain a little bit what your products are?
Yeah, well, the initial kind of launching on point concept was, your beauty products in general, but especially shower products, are 70 to 90% water. And we thought that made no sense because you're showering in water. So we took it out, concentrated down, and put it in a base of skincare. So our concentrates are over 50% aloe vera and glycerin. Glycerin is one of those powerful humectants. It pulls moisture into the hair cuticle. It makes it more flexible, softer, silkier hair. And so we saw these benefits of these potent plant-based. And I think that's something we also talk about now more, is that when you use natural ingredients in a high potency, they're really strong and really powerful. And so we wanted to be able to deliver that in this concentrate format. And I think now when we talk about it, people love them for how they deliver for, hydrated scalp, softer, silkier hair, and they just happen to be more sustainable. It's really in that order for us.
I think that's really cool. And we're going to dive even further into that of this, messaging and sustainability. So just take me back a bit of, you're building this on the side of a high-paced career, and your co-founder, which you mentioned, also comes from a similar background. So the two of you, high performers in your field, are we in the kitchen on the weekend?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, we were definitely, starting to talk while we were still in our corporate careers. And experimenting on the side. But unlike, say, skincare, where you can really actually make in your kitchen, hair care is quite difficult. You do need to work with, in our case, chemists and contract manufacturers. So we actually did have a powder shampoo that we had been playing with, and we mixed it into aloe vera plant ourselves. And we said, this is a much more interesting texture, because we felt like it was closer to what people were used to using. I.e., most people are using a liquid, shampoo, etc. But it's not as harsh. It's very gentle on the skin. It's very soothing. And so kind of from this initial kind of concept of, okay, we could do it this way, we then had to go and find partners, because this was never been done before. This is a patent pending innovation. So we had to go and convince people, this can be done. You need to work with us and create this sort of net new product. And from there, of course, we got into glycerin, these other products that made them the concentrates they are and the composition they are today. But yeah, it was quite a journey.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like a lot more intimidating than most people would expect.
Yeah, it's lots of iteration.
So I've heard three main benefits coming from these products, right? We have the reducing plastic and sustainability aspect. We have the better quality product and the natural piece of it. So when you find this product that at first, our first iteration, as you mentioned, it's changed since, but that first product you feel ready to go to market, how do you decide what kind of messaging to lead with?
That's a great one. I think we always knew, because we came from beauty, that performance matters. It's interesting though, because obviously our values and impact was driving us. I think even though we said performance was first, we definitely were still leading, and people knew us for the sustainability message, and it was just coming through the strongest. And so that is something we definitely led with. It was obviously part of our uniqueness, and we cared about it a lot. And sustainability is not just for planet. We now say too, often what's better for the planet is better for us too. So there's always that both push and pull. And so that was part of the initial kind of positioning. And I think we learned along the way, though, that there is this sort of perceived sacrifice that people assume on beauty products, et cetera, from a performance standpoint, that if it's sustainable or if it's, clean, it's not going to work as well. And so what we sort of found is that over time, from bringing people into the brand, it was more important to lead with that performance message first. So actually for us, it was explaining in a very simple terms, what is a concentrate, and actually leaning into the idea of hair care meets skincare. So that, there was a skinification trend of scalp and hair. And so we can deliver on that very uniquely because the products look like skincare for your scalp. They're literally based in skincare. And so when we started explaining to people it's hair care meets skincare, start paying attention to your scalp and your skin and skin too, people kind of grabbed onto that. And then they understood, okay, I get the benefit. And then they learn more about the brand. They learn more about our values and the values alignment. That's more like the world that we create around it. And that flip in messaging was a huge part of our unlock. Before that, you're chugging along, and also there was a lot of product and tweaking that was happening. And when we really got that customer message fit, not just product market fit, that's when we actually had our big 6x growth year and kind of continued from there. Yeah, that was a big pivotal moment for us.
6x based
in 1 year, yeah.
It was like largely off a shift in messaging.
Largely off that. I mean, I think it's interesting too, though. The prior year, it's all the, I don't know, like the work that's done before that also leads up to it. We had to do a big supply chain change, kind of vertically integrate and improve our quality control. So there was a lot of work leading up that allowed us to be able to scale, but I do think it was that messaging to our customer and finding the right customer that it really resonated with, which what allowed us to unlock.
So I want to talk about this on a granular level, because when you're saying, when we started explaining it this way, customers really got it. Where are we talking to customers? Is this on product page? Is it on social media? Are you pulling focus groups? How are you really figuring out what things are landing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's interesting too, because coming from the corporate life, everything was like research, focus groups, insights. And I think when we got into the startup world, it's pretty much just like learning by doing, talking to your customer, getting out there. So very much, obviously from a CX perspective, hearing what your customers have to say, the good and the bad, as well as actually testing messaging, mainly in our case through meta ads. So we did a lot of testing. It was a way to really find out what messages were resonating, kind of with data behind those messages. So you can kind of say, yes, this works. No, this doesn't, very like quantitatively.
Right.
And then you could start leaning into the certain messages that were working. And so, yeah, we definitely scaled initially through Meta.
Yeah, I think it's such a great tangible example because it's a space where it's so easy to track something like conversions, right? Are people buying or not? Are they signing up for the discount or whatever it is that you're promoting? Versus sometimes if we spend too much time in this conversation phase, we could talk to customers all day and maybe they're telling us all the things they want to hear and they still don't end up buying, right?
Yes.
Maybe there's somebody that loves to give feedback.
And that's actually something with sustainability too. Like people tell you all the time of day, and even
Right.
that they want that, right? Because I mean, it's great, right? Like we all want that, I think, deep down, right? But is that the main purchase driver? And is that what you're really looking for when you're going out to buy a shampoo, a body wash, a scalp serum? You have usually like a real problem you're trying to solve, and you want either it to, help you solve that problem, or at least style us, look a certain way. And so we need to make sure we solve that people problem. And then, of course, we can try to solve some world problems in the background.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love the way you mentioned how we have this default of when we hear sustainability, we think we're sacrificing something else. Like, I'm going to choose the product that is better for the planet, but maybe it means it doesn't work as well for me, or maybe it means this other thing. I see it in a different space, but similarly, when I talk about helping people build without burnout, it sounds like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the success or sacrifice the ambitions I have. So it's really interesting. And I think a lot of spaces where we're trying to do something different, we also have to tell people, hey, that A doesn't necessarily equal B, right? These are some assumptions where we have to fight actively.
Yeah, and also like things have changed a lot. Like one that we talked about before being a powder or a solid shampoo, but by putting it in this skincare base, we can work with really amazing ingredients, like very powerful plant-based ingredients, some of which either didn't exist, a while ago, or didn't exist because of the form factor is different. So to your point about like, oh, we think there's a sacrifice, but things have changed, they've evolved, and so we can expect more.
Right. And I think it's really cool to lead with that performance-based messaging and then show people, hey, something that works this well can actually also have all these other benefits. Do you feel like that challenges the bigger box competition to show, hey, we can have performance and things like better impact? Or do you think that they are kind of ignoring that from a consumer perspective?
I mean, coming from the corporate world, I think they all have their mandates and they have all their reports on what they are trying to make change in this way. And obviously the change they can make or how quickly they can make a change is different. And I think, but also any small change they do make has a material impact because of the amount of units and volume they're doing. So we're really supportive of any of that change. I think the nice thing about concentrates is that inherently, because they're smaller, they're lighter to ship, the type of ingredients we can use, they're kind of inherently just sustainable. You don't have to be like, plastic offsets this, not using ocean.
Right.
Like you don't have to because it's inherently more sustainable by form. So we love that. It's obviously part of our uniqueness, but we're really champions of like all the work we're doing in the space. And, I do think, we kind of talked about this before, but I do think sustainability does sort of ebb and flow in terms of how much people are paying attention to, how much people are talking about it.
Right.
And so I do hope that it stays at the forefront or at least kind of comes back a little bit in terms of making efforts towards it. But I do think the bigger companies are trying to make changes, and I'm just hoping that we can make them faster.
Yeah, I love to see that when, sometimes we can accept things as is of it's too difficult to make this product sustainable or it's too difficult to make these changes or reduce our plastics. And then when we see a smaller business come in and do it, I just think it's such a good way to also keep those bigger companies accountable, right? It made me think when you were talking about the bigger changes, it's like those plastic water bottles. Remember when they almost just got rid of the neck of the water bottles? But at scale, it does make a difference, right? But it's not the same kind of innovation that we see.
It's not the game-changing innovation, but it's like those little micro changes.
Okay, so you're getting the feedback largely through those meta ads. Especially as two co-founders that have so much experience in this space, how did you navigate and balance taking that feedback that is data-driven, which I assume would make it a little more black and white for you, but how do you balance knowing when to trust your instincts versus listening to customer data?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think in general, we almost always need to trust our instincts more, but the data in this particular case was showing that it was working. I think the harder part for us is, and we did scale that from like an acquisition perspective, I think the harder part for us was how do we translate that into the entire Everest world? And it's sort of continually evolving and being updated right now. So even if we had that message in like a meta ad and something's coming in, our website only recently got even updated with a brand refresh just earlier this year, but we're still going through so many changes right now. And this movement we had started 2 years ago. So it's a really long process. We're actually working on a packaging update now. It's going to be a beautiful, fresh packaging coming next year. So we have a lot of different changes. And I think that's probably the bigger part is you hear this, you make a move, but you can't make all the moves at once. Right. And then how do you build that entire world that you're trying to create around that message and still make sure you're holding true to your values, but you're resonating with your customer and your customer now, but also customer you want to have, which are sometimes there's overlap, we think, especially in values, but not always necessarily overlap in terms of like the next customer you're trying to bring into the fold. So it's an interesting dynamic. For us, I think doing something very unique, et cetera, has just been a very like ever evolving process.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point because there's benefits to, we see a lot of online businesses or even having your own website. We can go in and edit the messaging, but to your point, when you're dealing with products, when you're just dealing with product pages, overall messaging on a website, right? That changes everything. Yeah, if you're putting postcards in packages.
Yeah, and for us too, it's almost like we have too much to say. And so it's like you have a PDP page and you're like, do I lead with, this message on our uniqueness? Do I lead with the benefit? Do we lead with and of course, in the end, if you deliver too many messages, you deliver nothing, right? And so I think that's also one of the challenges we have is just kind of constantly tweaking and changing, okay, what benefit, what order, how are we saying this that really resonates with our customer?
And so when you've experienced something like that 6x after a messaging change, I would assume we put a lot of weight in the messaging. Do you find if there's ever periods where you feel stagnant? Is it messaging you go to right away? Is it adding a new product? Is it tweaking things? How do you navigate that decision?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I think it's a combination, messaging and how we deliver on that, and also just like the medium too, is it video content? Is it educational content? Is it there's lots, I think, content, I mean, now just the way you have to feed the beast, content seems to be king. It seems like there's never enough. So that's something that we're always challenged to do more of. We are an innovation kind of driven company. So we do focus in on innovation. I wouldn't say it's necessarily where we go to of like, okay, we need to bring the next dollar in on the innovation. But we are trying to really map out a very strong innovation roadmap that aligns with our, ethos, and really bring, say, 2 to 4 kind of core hero innovations a year. But we really need to make sure they have a white space of real reason for being. So we're kind of into heroes, multitasking kind of products. The sort of hybrid across sort of industries always has, if it's hair, it has a care benefit to it. So when we think about our innovation, they have to have a real purpose, not just a flanker. Because that's one thing that happened for my past corporate life, is that you end up having this like SKU proliferation. You're always launching something, and really it starts becoming a bit about marketing, and not necessarily having like a true need. So for us, we're really trying to be focused on a tighter assortment of heroes that really have a need and perform.
Yeah, talk to me further about that. You said 2 to 4 core heroes a year?
Yeah, well, two would say like tier A, and then we have a bunch of like supporting sort of actors. Yeah.
Okay, and break down further for me what you mean by a hero for somebody listening.
Well, I'll give an example. So last year we launched our SKU Everboost. It's our tripeptide scalp serum, and that would be considered one of our hero products. So it's obviously we were known for a shampoo and conditioner, but this particular product is a great one. It really helps with kind of creating that optimal scalp environment for your healthiest, fullest looking hair. It really helps kind of, round out our healthy hair system. And so for us, had a real purpose. There was a real need coming from our community, because a lot of people are suffering from, hair shed, hair fall, hormonal changes, thinning, and this product delivers it in a, plant-based, really, really power-packed concentrate way that can deliver on it. It's super soothing. And so for us, that it made sense. It was like a very specific need that we bring in the portfolio versus just like an extra item in the lineup.
And so for these product innovations, when you're getting the feedback from customers, do you find that you get a lot of that feedback naturally now, where customers are asking, hey, can you make a product like this? Because I love your shampoo and conditioner. I love a product like this. Are you actively seeking out with email list or social media?
Yeah, our community is quite active, and they definitely tell us what they think.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, they tell us what they think. And we really do try to listen, and we do bring in different things and make changes. And I don't know, for instance, we have our little caps. We have a flip cap that we've piloted because that was something that they were asking for, and we'll see how we update packaging with that in mind. But we really do try to listen and tweak based on the needs of our customer. But from a new product perspective, yes, we're constantly getting kind of, you should try this. I would love to have this in our routine. And then we do some surveys too, out to the community in a larger scale to get a larger sample size, and so we'll get feedback that way as well. But in general, our community is not shy to tell us what they think. Yeah.
I'm that's great, I think, right? For the most part. Yeah. So we're talking a lot about these different steps you're taking, how you're engaging with your customers. Can you tell us a little bit about what your team looks like right now?
Yeah, so our team, we are now about 11 people, changing full-time, and then we have our kind of support fractional group as well, mostly based in Toronto, but we have some sort of across the country and then in the U.S. as well. And yeah, a mix of different people, obviously, on the marketing and the operations side, but the team, obviously, and the culture is just super important to us. We really try to hire people who share similar values and passion for what we're doing and for the industry, and that really, I think, helps drive you, because, obviously, you can be at the highs and you're growing, and then you're going to have moments where it's not as easy and you're kind of stagnating, you're looking for that next unlock. And so having a team around you who can really rally and who can see the work we're doing is good, believe is going to allow you to hit that next sort of growth stage is really, really important.
So how do you as a team navigate when you're launching one of these new hero products, how we're going to figure out, okay, what is the messaging around this product specifically? And then how do you roll it out with the team?
Yeah. Well, I guess when we're going through the process of new product development, we're focusing in on what claims can we make, what can we say about this product during the whole process. So in terms of how we want to position it, it's usually coming out right at the beginning. In terms of, even at the beginning with this Everboost, it was fertilizer for your scalp was one of the concepts. But then you do hear your customer give you feedback, and you talk to even regulatory, and through that process you're going to make alterations and tweaks. And I think in the startup world we're definitely making, I feel changes and tweaks and listening all the time. It's from my corporate world, it was almost create a campaign sort of in the background and then launch it, and then you're done, you're kind of, and then you're on to the next thing. It's into sales room to sell it. I feel in the startup world, and when you're creating something innovative, it's just not the end there. You're going to keep having to iterate even once it's in market with messaging.
We're talking a lot about how to sell to those consumers, but how do you explore retail, selling to other retail businesses, and then also having a direct to consumer? And do you feel like you have to emphasize different messaging when you're maybe pitching to a retail location? How much do you have your strategy focused on getting into stores versus staying straight to that consumer to maintain that relationship?
Yeah, so far, like our business does skew more towards direct to consumer as well as Amazon. Then we have some great retail partners, Detox Market, Well.ca, etc. Bunch of boutiques and salons, and they have been obviously great and instrumental. And I think in terms of messaging, etc., though, I would say most of them want to focus more on the like the benefits, the performance benefits. So that's really the messaging that they'll have, and they usually have even less space to say it, right? So there's a real limit in terms of what they can say, and so that's something we're kind of constantly evolving. Is like, what can they say, what resonates the most with their customer, and usually they'll make tweaks too. Like we'll make a suggestion, but then they will adjust it based on their own copy style, what they know resonates with their customer. So for them too, it's changing, and then we'll usually do. Could be twice a year or so, like a wave, an update, whether it's some visual updates, copy updates, etc. And we'll give that, like we'll start usually D2C, and then we'll cascade that out to our partners as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I'm sure it's interesting to gather that feedback too of how they're adjusting the messaging based on their specific customers.
Yes.
Oh, that's super interesting. And we talked a little bit about content, right? And how, there's no end to feeding the algorithm beast. Do you use similar exercises with your content strategy of really trying to pay attention what kind of posts are doing well? Again, how do you balance that with knowing, well, at the end of the day, we have an innovative product and we want to have some education around how to use it. So do you really listen to what's performing? How do you guys navigate that?
It's a great one. I think we're still trying to crack that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got this one down yet.
Yeah.
I think, we've had like our ad creative that performs a certain way. Then there's like organic creative, and there's what we do in-house versus working with creators. So I would say this is an area that we're actually focusing in on right now, is really trying to crack like our content and like the scaling of our content, because I think as we grew, it didn't really quite keep up with us and it became a barrier. And so right now we're really trying to figure out, how do we do it? What parts is in-house? Who are we using for, content creators? And what platforms are we doing it across? Because now, almost like social commerce, everything is leaned into like content drives these things. And so you can be getting content from all these different places and you can use it differently. And so for us, we've been more focused, like we haven't done a lot of like paid, Instagram partnerships, etc. It's been more organic, but how do we blend these different things and find new ways to reach the right creators to hit new audiences and really feed that content engine. So I would say this is like our primary focus for the back half of this year.
And I know we talked a little bit about a team around that. Coming back to having a co-founder too, and you're navigating all of these decisions, do you feel that you have really split priorities and responsibilities? Or are these decisions that to this day, you two are coming together and saying, how are we moving forward with social content? How are we developing this new product?
Yeah, I think for us it's interesting because Jamie and I on paper have some like similar sort of skills that are coming up from CPG, et cetera, both started in marketing. I think what's made it work though is we have quite different skill sets. And so Jamie handles more like of the true like, creative and marketing, traditional, and I do a bit more of the like commercial, do innovation, general management side of the business. So we do have our kind of set sort of wheelhouse that we play in, but any of the main like strategy and decisions, we really try to make the decision together. So it's kind of both. It's like every time we try to divide, sometimes we realize that we do work better together on these things. So we kind of have to come back together. So I feel like it's going to just keep changing based on like the needs of the business.
Something we've talked about on the show so far with other co-founders is what it looks like to have a co-founder at the table when you're having investing conversations or when you're trying to raise money. Do you feel like having a co-founder is ever seen as a downside with investors? Do they ever want to feel like has more say? And how do you guys split that? Does someone have more say?
No, that somebody doesn't have more say. And yeah, it hasn't really been an issue for us. I think earlier on there was this need for like role clarity. And so we had to kind of like say, okay, this is on paper, what our roles are, even if it was more blended. But I do think there's a huge benefit of having a co-founder. Like, obviously I look up to people who are solo and who can do it, but I still think most of them that I know have a right-hand other person, because having somebody you can talk to about big decisions and bounce ideas off of is really important. And even to your point about raising capital, like I led more of the raise part. That is a full-time job. So, I was able to spend more time on that because Jamie could step up and do more of the other part of the business. So I do think having the co-founder is, I don't know if it's a luxury, but for me, I don't know if I could do it any other way, because I really feel like not only do we balance each other and have different skill set, but like when you need it, like that other person is there.
Yeah, I can't imagine scaling a business like this while doing fundraising.
And I've also had 2 pregnancies during this journey.
Okay, yeah.
So I have a 4-year-old and almost 10-month-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And does Jamie have kids as well?
She does. Hers are a little bit older.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about that, of navigating what that looks like. I know you mentioned early on when you were making this leap that you felt like you had support from the family. And I think no matter how true that is, making these decisions like having kids can be really difficult to navigate. So how did you feel making those decisions?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like, it's tough. But I think for us, obviously, and Jamie and everything, we're always very supportive of like, okay, like obviously these are decisions you have to make. Actually, our investor group is also very supportive of like the family, these are decisions you need to make, and like we'll make it work. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, and like obviously we have such a passion for the business, like there's trade-offs. So for instance, like, with my first, like I took a 6-week mat leave and was back full time. And then this time I did try to take 4 months, but I was still working during the 4 months, just more on the side. So that obviously has a price. But also the flip side is that when you are doing and you have a young family, like there's flexibility. It always takes up your mind space. So there's kind of like that mental cost, I feel like, all the time. But there is flexibility that if you need to do something and go, you can. Or right now we work 4 days a week hybrid, like from home, and then we have 1 day a week in the office. So that flexibility really helps when you have a young family. And so I really, I guess I'm happy and lucky that that's the case, especially because, my husband's a lawyer and he doesn't have necessarily that flexibility. And so that's been really helpful. But I'd say the only other thing too is, I had to build up a support network around in terms of other care, et cetera, for the kids, so that I could be focused on Everist.
And I'm sure having a co-founder that has been through it, probably she understands on another level as well. Yeah. I think it's so important and just so impactful to see. So I also just really appreciate it, because I think when we don't see women doing that, it can be harder to imagine. And so I love speaking about that and hearing what it's like, and how I think it just changes how we run companies, because your experience changes what you make possible for your employees, right? Yeah.
And I think too, it's a real, you have to focus, you have to prioritize. Your time is so valuable. And so I do think you learn a whole nother level of how to do that and to make decisions. And I think it can be really, really helpful, because it gives you like a very like real perspective on life and like what matters. And then also what matters for Everest and for the business and for your customers, like you're really like in it. And so I think it can add a lot of value.
Yeah, I think so too. I want to talk, so we were talking a little bit just there about funding, and you mentioned your investor group. So I do want to back up just a bit so we have context, but I really want to talk about that, because to me that almost feels unimaginable that the investing group is so supportive of that, and I'd love to hear more of that. But let's talk a little bit about funding. Out the gate, you mentioned it was harder to be in the kitchen on the side of your business because of the way that hair care is. How did you go about funding in the early days to get us started?
Yeah. So we actually raised a small seed round pretty early on with like a minimal viable product that was not even the first iteration that came to market, and a business plan. We got a group of strategic investors involved, mostly some like micro VC, but also founders that had already been scaling their businesses, et cetera, that came in. So basically angels, micro VCs, and they were amazing right from the beginning and really stayed with us a long ways until we raised our kind of growth round, or Series A, with a larger kind of VC PE based in the US. Most of our other group investors are Canadian. Yes, and they have been very supportive along the way. And We obviously meet regularly with them and have like strategic conversations as well as just anything. We actually share an office with one of our investors, and they have a portfolio of companies that are in there, and it's just been great.
Oh, that's awesome. How much are you able to interact with the other companies?
Well, we share the space, so we
Yeah.
kind of see them all the time. We don't actually, I guess, like cross collaborate as much as we probably could and should. But it is nice just to even share like the energy and have like the different
Totally.
people like around. And then, we probably should even do more in terms of like cross collabs and sharing.
Sometimes it's nice just to be around people who get it. Too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That
it's a
can
good
be-
environment.
Yeah. In this business, did you feel that funding was just going to be a necessity? And with every step you take in it, is that something you guys just actively speak about? Is there any goal to bootstrap more or to get even more investment? Because I think this is a really interesting thing to break down how we think about funding, because people have such different approaches.
Yeah, in such different approaches, and I feel like an approach is like wrong. I think for us,
Right.
it was really, we knew early on based on what we were trying to do. So not only the hair care kind of industry segment, but also doing something really innovative and novel. We needed to have a larger budget, and we did invest our own funds in the beginning, but we knew that wasn't going to get us far enough. So we had made the decision early on that we did need to have some, and we also wanted to have some other, strategic like thoughts and around the table and experiences, almost like investor advisors, which has helped us as well. So we knew pretty early on that that's what the path we wanted to go. But we also, when we went through different processes, we didn't want to raise for the sake of raising. Raising is hard and it comes with a whole bunch of other things. So, and it also in our industry, it's different than like SaaS or tech or these things. And so I think being limited about it and making sure you're ready for that investment and be clear about what that investment is for and how it can work hard for you to kind of get you to the next level. And I feel like some businesses need it earlier, some don't. And if you can bootstrap and you can get really far, then like fantastic. I think that's amazing. So when you need it though, it does obviously help fuel that growth.
Can you talk about why it's different for your industry? You mentioned like versus a tech or a SaaS, investing feels really different for your space.
I guess it's just that in tech, I feel like it's this idea that you almost like the number of how much you raise was like the goal.
Right.
It's almost like the more
badge.
the badge was the raise
Yeah.
and like the number and how big and like those industries also work a little different in terms of like the multiple and how it scales and like their hit rate. And in CPG, it's a little bit different. You don't probably need to raise as much as quickly. And, there's other pieces to the business that you kind of need to get first before you can even maybe spend that money wisely and for what. So it is different. But I guess for my perspective is like we were not trying to raise for the badge. It
Right.
was raising because
Like,
we felt like we actually needed the funds to be able to get the business to the next level.
Right. And you mentioned the strategic side as well. You want to look for investors that can bring some strategy behind it. What
Yes.
do you feel like you had as criteria for investments? And was that across the board of, hey, we want all of our investors to meet this? Or once we have one that feels a little more strategic, we can have one that's more focused on cash? Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, for us, that was actually huge. So pretty much like almost like all of our investors have some type of like strategic role to play, or they came from some kind of background that felt relevant. And it obviously, even with the larger investors, as we went to raise our kind of growth round, it was a very focused raise. Like we were okay for it to take a little longer to make sure we thought was the right partner who was in the industry, being like beauty, who had experience there, who had networks there, who could really add value. So we were definitely not looking for money from anywhere. And it's a marriage, right? It's like you're getting in this and you're going to be together for a while. And so we really felt strongly like finding the right, not only I guess experience, but type of people we wanted to also be around and work with, who really believed in our values, what we were trying to achieve. That was also really important to us.
Yeah, I hear that when you, again, talk about them being supportive of you, wanting to build your family and them understanding what goes into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So being so research-driven and really diving into better understanding your customer, you were so impact-driven and knowing that sustainability was at the core. Was that something you found in your customer as well, or were there any new discoveries in who your customer actually was?
Yeah, great question. early on, like we did think that was our customer. Early on, the concept was almost like for those who wanted to like shampoo bars but didn't, because that was also kind of us and having this more performance product. But really, as we listened to our customer throughout the journey and just before kind of our big growth unlock, we actually found a customer, and it's more of a psychographic than a demographic, but it does tend to be a customer who's, 40 plus, who's going through perimenopause, menopause, or just hormonal changes, etc., who has a real problem to solve, whether, they're having some hair shed, hair fall, they're getting itchy, dry scalp, there's just other, their hair is graying, so the texture changes, and it's not as easy to like supple and soft and silky to style. They're the ones who have these like transformations. They actually are like the types of reviews and testimonials we get for them of like the impact the products had for them is really amazing. It's one of the most probably rewarding parts of it. Is when you read them, you're like, wow, the type of impact we can have. And so, and they also are really sticky customer. They write these reviews and then they tell all their friends that they should make a change because it really had an impact and it was a transformation. So that is something that we definitely leaned into, and we really value that group and that community, that we can help like solve a real problem that they have.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating because my impression, at least from a lot of the bigger brands like the L'Oreals of the world, often when it comes to hair, the commercials and the advertisements we see often feel very mass audience, right? It's either like dry or oily, same with any type of skin product. And so when you're deciding, hey, this is our really sticky customer and we like her, does it feel intimidating that this feels like such a subset of an audience? Or does that feel really like, hey, we know how to solve problems for this customer?
Yeah, I'd say like we still view it as a very large, broad customer base. And so it doesn't feel too niche or anything like that. I think for us, it's just finding a real problem we can solve, that we can have a meaningful impact within that. And it's not just about, the cosmetic look. I think sometimes in beauty, everything's about the cosmetic look. And I think for us, we're really about like scalp and skin and hair wellness, like longevity. So how do you use products, new things that actually make your scalp healthier over time, and that's going to grow your fullest, thicker hair. So it's more that like inside out sort of beauty.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sticky, and our customers really resonate with that. And I don't necessarily think it has to be age. I think they've had some of these transformations that they can look to, and they say, one of the cheesy comments we get quite a bit, it's like, it's the hair of my youth. And it's cute. It's like, but it's like, oh, it's so soft and silky into style, and that's great. But also those same kind of things can happen with other sort of groups and customers. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a side niche, but I would say we're more on that, like, it's skincare. It's like more taking a skincare approach to hair, where hair, I feel like traditionally has been more of a cosmetic approach.
Right. I mean, I'm someone, I've always had a dry scalp. I have eczema, like growing up on and off, but I've had many times where I'm like, I wish I could just put my skincare products.
You can now. You can. Everest.
No, it's true. It's such a great solution to a problem. And I think that's really what, to your point, people want to then tell other people of, hey, I have this great thing that not only now my scalp feels better, but my hair is better as a result.
Yeah, and you don't have to trade off the two. There are some scalp products where I've used where it's like there's a trade-off between the scalp and then my hair. And I think in the end, the scalp, I feel like for most people is sort of like a conduit, but I really want beautiful hair. And so that's one thing Everest is kind of uniquely does, is that it works on hydrating the scalp, etc., but your hair can actually look beautiful. It's sort of like lightweight hydration. It gives that soft, silky, supple
I've
thing.
Definitely had those times where it's like, I'm going to use the scalp product today because I don't have to like go do anything or be on camera. My hair might not look the cutest after.
And even Everboost, because it's in aloe vera, not oil or whatever, it actually dries down really nice. So you can go out during the day. It's so easy.
Right.
So I think we're trying to make it just easier for people.
I love that so much. And with a product like this that is so innovative, let's talk a little bit about patent pending, because this is a different territory you're also exploring.
Yeah. Well, we launched with our patent pending concentrate, so the shampoo, conditioner, body wash, etc. Canadian, innovation, and went through a utility patent process. We're still in it, so it's a very long process. So we are over 5 years, almost 6 years into the process. There's lots of iteration along the way, and it's really, I guess I would say, a piece of creating the moat. We don't believe it's the moat itself, because there's a lot of different things that can happen in this process, but it creates a moat. The other parts of the moat is the concentrates difficult to make. They're really difficult. And there's been a lot of trade secrets and things we had to do in the scale up process to make them. And then of course the brand is also a big part of the moat. But the patent pending, I think, does play a role, and it's very unique to have something sort of unique and patent pendingable, you could say, right. In this space. Because, if you were to, not everyone knows in the beauty industry, but like a lot of it is you have a benchmark product, you go to a contract manufacturer, say like, make something like this, you put a brand on it, and you go kind of, and that is often done. And that's why maybe some of the barrier to entry, and there's so many brands popping up. But for us, because we're doing something innovative and we own all our own IP, even if we are working with contract manufacturers and chemists, we couldn't do that. So we had to really dig in and really figure out completely new formulas and form factors and processes.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel if there's other people that are seeing your brand and coming out with concentrates? Is that something that intimidates you, excites you, is like neutral information to you?
Well, I would say, I think in general, having more people making sustainable and concentrates broadly, I think it's good for awareness, et cetera, and driving up the overall, I guess, adoption of the category. Do I think copycats are good? No, no, I don't. But I do think there is something about, growing the overall piece of the pie, having more consumers using products like that, they understand that they work, they're efficacious, and that they adopt into that. And it's interesting. I feel like in North America, we're a little probably further behind than in Europe, where there are different types of form factors and different types of things that people are more used to. So in general, I think a lot of that innovation is a real positive.
Yeah. And I think when you know that you have a quality product, it just means that other people are getting more educated about the type of product, and then we'll seek out the best, and you'll be right there.
Perfect.
How has the experience been as a Canadian CPG brand specifically, whether that's with funding or getting your product out to consumers?
Yeah, we launched in the US and Canada at the same time. It was important for us always to be kind of in both markets. Our business has scaled actually in the last even year more, quite a lot in Canada, and it's been a huge Canadian movement, which is amazing. And our products are largely made in Canada, which was also important to us. We do have a couple that are made in the States, and actually we're continuing always to work on where we can dual productions, etc. But obviously the US market is large, and we're looking to continue to grow there. And I think it's really important and to see companies that are based here in Canada be able to go onto the global stage. Obviously the US just is our neighbor, but that could be beyond the US into other markets. But I think it's really cool to be able to see us having a headquarters here and being able to go abroad. But it comes with its own challenges to really understand the unique market dynamics and how do you resonate and scale in those markets. There's a lot of similarities but a lot of differences, say with the US. So we're growing there as well, but we also need to bring on the relevant local people to also be able to help us continue to scale there.
Absolutely. I saw actually just a TikTok video the other day, and this woman was talking about these Canadian brands that we're continuing to see expand into the US and elsewhere, and how cool it is to see as Canadians. But she kind of had this theory of, if you can make it in Canada, you can make it anywhere, because I think we have, to her point, a bit of tougher consumers. We're maybe less likely to spend, a little bit more curious with our dollars, of understanding where they're going, the value we're getting. I wonder if that feels like it rings true to you.
Yeah, I think Canada, a lot of those sentiments are true. I think, although I would say in the last year and a bit with the whole Made in Canada movement and stuff, there really was a push to buy more local, et cetera, which was great to see. And I hope, some of that does continue. But in terms of, the market, I think the other part too, just I guess you could say the financial dynamics are challenging too. It's a large country, and you're shipping, for our case, product across the country. How do you do that efficiently? So there's also that just challenge in itself that you have to get across. But then I would say the last piece is, I love that Toronto and even Vancouver, there's different hubs of different industry and beauty hubs, and there's some amazing founders and brands that are here now. But there is something about New York, LA, and who you're just bumping shoulders with. So, how do you kind of become part of those circles is something that we're kind of thinking about and trying to be focused in on, because it is important to be there, be relevant.
Yeah, I think it's such a great combination of already having to face these unique challenges, as you said, of shipping wider across country, but then being able to go and take advantage of opportunities like getting to rub elbows in the right room. That's awesome. So if you were talking to a CPG founder in Canada right now that's maybe feeling a little bit stuck, maybe not sure if their messaging is resonating, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say in general, don't try to be perfect. Like, obviously, like, you're going to test, you're going to iterate, you're going to listen to your customer. Also, as women, I think we actually are good listeners. So we should like lean into that and make sure we listen. And then from there, after you test, like, follow your gut, follow your passion. So I feel like, you have to take the leap. And then in our case, obviously, the way we were testing, if it's specific to messaging, sometimes obviously the results and the sales will start telling you, or your customer will start telling you if you're on the right path. But you need to follow your gut and just do it.
And what do you think would surprise the version of you that started this business all those years ago about you or the business now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think a lot has, I guess, changed and evolved, and what maybe like matters to me and stuff has changed and evolved. But looking at my future, I guess I would never expect necessarily I'd be sitting here. I think now I have all these big goals and ambitions, but earlier on it was just like getting this off the ground and is this possible? So I think we got here. Now we're on to the next growth stage. So I think that's exciting. And yeah, my corporate self was it was different. It was a different world back then.
And what would you say you have your eyes on for this next chapter? What's a big next goal for you and Everist?
I mean, I think for us, obviously, we're looking to continue to grow and scale. By grow and scale, we feel like we can have more impact at scale, and then also to expand our channel distribution and to be into more retail and more touch points, more omni-channel. And that's starting more with the social commerce side and then kind of continuing into additional retail expansion.
Maybe next time we talk, it'll be an Everest product sold every 30 seconds
I
or
love it.
15 seconds.
All right, we're manifesting.
Yes.
We're manifesting
Every
here.
10
I love
seconds
it.
we'll say.
Okay,
We got to go
okay,
big if we're
okay.
manifesting.
I love it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
And what's the best way for people to follow along with Everest's journey or check out your products and stay connected with you?
Yeah, you can follow us at Hello Everest on Instagram, as well as go to our website or any of our social channels. So Hello Everest.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.